Chapter 6, Tissues. From the last chapter, we recall that all living organisms are made of cells. In unicellular organisms, a single cell performs all basic functions. For example, in amoeba, a single cell carries out movement, intake of food, gaseous exchange, and excretion. But in multicellular organisms, there are millions of cells. Most of these cells are specialized to carry out specific functions. Each specialized function is taken up by a different group of cells. Since these cells carry out only a particular function, they do it very efficiently. In human beings, muscle cells contract and relax to cause movement. Nerve cells carry messages. Blood flows to transport oxygen, food, hormones, and waste material, and so on. In plants, vascular tissues conduct food and water from one part of the plant to other parts. So, multicellular organisms show division of labor. Cells specializing in one functions are often grouped together in the body. This means that a particular function is carried out by a cluster of cells at a definite place in the body. This cluster of cells, called a tissue, is arranged and designed so as to give the highest possible efficiency of function. Blood, phloem, and muscle are all examples of tissues. A group of cells that are similar in structure and or work together to achieve a particular function forms a tissue. 6.1 Are plants and animals made of same types of tissue? Let us compare their structure and functions. Do plants and animals have the same structure? Do they both perform similar functions? There are noticeable differences between the two. Plants are stationary or fixed. They don't move since they have to be upright. They have a large quantity of supportive tissue. The supportive tissue generally has dead cells. Animals, on the other hand, move around in search of food, mates, and shelter. They consume more energy as compared to plants. Most of the tissues they contain are living. Another difference between animals and plants is in the pattern of growth. The growth in plants is limited to certain regions, while this is not so in animals. There are some tissues in plants that divide throughout their life. These tissues are localized in certain regions. Based on the dividing capacity of the tissues, various plant tissues can be classified as growing or meristematic tissue and permanent tissue. Cell growth in animals is more uniform. So, there is no such demarcation of dividing and non-dividing regions in animals. The structural organizations of organs and organ systems is far more specialized and localized in complex animals than even in very complex plants. This fundamental difference reflects the different modes of life pursued by these two major groups of organisms, particularly of their different feeding methods. Also, they are differently adapted for a sedentary existence on one hand, plants, and action locomotion on the other, animals, contributing to this difference in organ system design. It is with reference to these complex animal and plant bodies that we will now talk about the concept of tissues in some detail. Questions? Do this and comment this. 6.2 Plant tissues. 6.2.1 Meristematic tissue. Jarvan, Jar2. Figure growth of roots in onion bulbs. Activity: take two glass jars and fill them with water. Now take two onion bulbs and place one on each jar as shown in figure. Observe the growth of roots in both the bulbs for a few days. Measure the length of roots on day 1, 2 and 3. On day 4, cut the root tips of the onion bulb in jar 2 by about 1 cm. After this, observe the growth of roots in both the jars and measure their lengths each day for 5 more days and record the observation in tables like the table below. Length: day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5. Jar 1, jar 2. Comment this. From the above observation, answer the following questions. 1. Which of the two onions has longer roots? Why? 2. 2. Do the roots continue growing even after we have removed their tips? 3. Why would the tips stop growing in jar 2 after we cut them? The growth of plants occur only in certain specific regions. This is because the dividing tissue, also known as meristematic tissue, is located only at this point depending on the region where they are present. Meristematic tissues are classified as apical, lateral, and intercalary. Figure: new cells produced by meristem are initially like those of meristem itself, but as they grow and mature, their characteristics slowly change and they become differentiated as components of other tissues. Apical meristem, intercalary meristem, lateral meristem. Figure: location of meristematic tissues in plant body. Apical meristem is present at the growing tips of stems and roots and increases the length of the stem and the root. The girth of the stem or root increases due to lateral meristem cambium. Intercalary meristem seen in some plants is located near the node. Cells of meristematic tissues are very active. They have dense cytoplasms, thin cellulose walls and prominent nuclei. They lack vacuoles. Can we think why they would lack vacuoles? You might want to refer to the functions of vacuoles in the chapter on cells. Six point 2.2 Permanent tissue. What happens to the cells formed by meristematic tissue? They take up a specific role and lose the ability to divide. As a result, they form a permanent tissue. This process of taking up a permanent shape, size, and a function is called differentiation. Differentiation leads to the development of various types of permanent tissue. Figure: section of a stem, cuticle, epidermis, collenchyma, parenchyma, phloem, xylem, vascular bundle. Activity 6.2. Take a plant stem and with the help of your teacher cut into very thin slices or sections. Now stain the slices with safranin. Place one neatly cut section on a slide and put a drop of glycerin. Cover with a cover slip and observe under a microscope. Observe the various types of cells and their arrangement. Compare it with figure. Now answer the following on the basis of your observation. 1. Are all cells similar in structure? 2. How many types of cells can be seen? 3. Can we think of reasons why there would be so many types of cells? We can also try to cut sections of plant roots. We can even try cutting sections of root and stem of different plants. 6.2.2.1 Simple permanent tissue. A few layers of cell beneath the epidermis are generally simple permanent tissue. Parenchyma is the most common simple permanent tissue. It consists of relatively unspecialized cells with thin cell walls. They are living cells. They are usually loosely arranged, thus large spaces between cells, intercellular space. Intercellular spaces are found in this tissue, figure A. This tissue generally stores food. In some situations, it contains chlorophyll and performs photosynthesis, and then it is called chlorenchyma. In aquatic plants, large air cavities are present in parenchyma to help them float. Such a parenchyma type is called Adenchyma. The flexibility in plants is due to another permanent tissue. Collenchyma is it allows bending of various parts of a plant like tendrils and stems of climbers without breaking. It also provides mechanical support. We can find this tissue in leaf stalks below the epidermis. The cells of these tissues are living, elongated, and irregularly thickened at the corners. There is very little intercellular spaces. Figure B. Intercellular spaces. A. Wall thickenings, nucleus, back wall, cell wall. B. C1. Thick lignified walls. C2. Narrow lumen, lignified thick wall. Figure various types of simple tissues: A. Parenchyma, B. Collenchyma, C. Sclerenchyma. 1. Transverse section, 2. Longitudinal section. Yet another type of permanent tissue is sclerenchyma. It is the tissue which makes the plant hard and stiff. We have seen the husk of a coconut. It is made of sclerenchymatous tissue. The cells of these tissues are dead. They are long and narrow as the walls are thickened due to lignin. Often these walls are so thick that there is no internal spaces inside the cell, figure C. This tissue is present in stems, around vascular bundles, in the veins of leaves, and in the hard covering of seeds and nuts. It provides strength to the plant parts. Activity 6.3. Take a freshly plucked leaf of royo, stretch and break it by applying pressure. While breaking it, keep it stretched gently so that some peel or skin projects out from the cut. Remove this peel and put it in a petri dish filled with water. Add a few drops of saffron, wait for a couple of minutes, and then transfer it onto a slide. Gently place a cover slip over it. Observe under microscope. What you observe is the outermost layer of cells called epidermis. The epidermis is usually made of a single layer of cells. In some plants living in very dry habitats, the epidermis may be thicker since protection against water loss is critical. The entire surface of a plant has an outer covering epidermis. It protects all the parts of the plant. Epidermal cells on the aerial figure, guard cells and epidermal cells, a lateral view with surface view. A. Guard cells. B. Epidermal cell. Stoma guard cell. Parts of the plant often secrete a waxy, water-resistant layer on their outer surface. This aids in protection against loss of water, mechanical injury and invasion by parasitic fungi. Since it has a protective role to play, cells of epidermal tissue form a continuous layer without intercellular spaces. Most epidermal cells are relatively flat. Often, their outer and side walls are thicker than the inner wall. We can observe small pores here and there in the epidermis of the lip. These pores are called stomata. Figure. The stomata are enclosed by two kidney-shaped cells called guard cells. They are necessary for exchanging gases with the atmosphere. Transpiration, loss of water in the form of water vapor, also takes place through stomata. Recall which gas is required for photosynthesis. Find out the role of transpiration in plants. Epidermal cells of the roots, whose functions is water absorption, commonly bear long hair like parts that greatly increase the total absorptive surface area. In some plants like desert plants, epidermis has a thick waxy coating of cutin, chemical substance with waterproof quality, on its outer surface. Can we think of a reason for this? Is the outer layer of a branch of a tree different from the outer layer of a young stem? As plants grow older, the outer protective tissue undergoes certain changes. A strip of secondary meristem located in the cortex forms layers of cells which constitutes the cork. Cells of cork are dead and compactly arranged without intercellular spaces. Figure. They also have a substance called suberin in their walls that makes them impervious to gases and water. Figure protective tissue, cork cells, ruptured epidermis. Six point 2.22 Complex permanent tissue. The different types of tissue we have discussed until now are all made of one type of cells, which look like each other. Such tissues are called simple permanent tissue. Yet another type of permanent tissue is complex tissues. Complex tissues are made of more than one type of cells. All the cells coordinate to perform a common function. Xylem and phloem are examples of such complex tissues. They are both conducting tissues and constitute a vascular bundle. Vascular tissue is a distinctive feature of the complex plants, one that has made possible their survival in the terrestrial environment. In figure showing a section of stem, can you see different types of cells in the vascular bundle? Xylem consists of tracheids, vessels, xylem parenchyma, figure A, B, C, and xylem fibers. Tracheids and vessels have thick walls, and many are dead cells when mature. Tracheids and vessels are tubular structures. This allows them to transport water and minerals vertically. The parenchyma stores food. Xylem fibers are mainly supportive in function. phloem is made up of 5 types of cells: sheath cells, sheath tubes, companion cells, phloem fibers, and the phloem parenchyma. Figure D. Sheath tubes are tubular cells with perforated walls. Phloem transport food from leaves to other parts of the plant. Except phloem fibers, other phloem cells are living cells. A trachea pit. B. Vessel pits. C. Xylem parenchyma, nucleus, cytoplasm. Figure types of complex tissues: sheath plate, sheath tube, phloem parenchyma, companion cells. Dissection of phloem. Questions? Comment this. Six point three. Animal tissues. When we breathe, we can actually feel the movement of our chest. How do these body parts move? For this, we have specialized cells called muscle cells. Figure. The contraction and relaxation of these cells result in movement. A stomach, smooth muscle fibers. Nucleus, smooth muscle fibers. Cell. Figure. Location of muscle fibers. During breathing, we inhale oxygen. Where does this oxygen go? It is absorbed in the lungs and then is transported to all the body cells through blood. Why would cells need oxygen? The functions of mitochondria we studied earlier provide a clue to this question. Blood flows and carries various substances from one part of the body to the other. For example, it carries oxygen and food to all cells. It also collects wastes from all parts of the body and carries them to the liver and kidney for disposal. Blood and muscles are both examples of tissues found in our body. On the basis of the functions they perform, we can think of different types of animal tissues, such as epithelial tissues, connective tissues, muscular tissues, and nervous tissues. Blood is a type of connective tissues and muscle forms muscular tissue. Six point three point one. Epithelial tissue. The covering or protective tissues in the animal body are epithelial tissues. Epithelium cover most organs and cavities within the body. It also forms a barrier to keep different body systems separate. The skin, the lining of the mouth, the lining of blood vessels, lung alveoli, and kidney tubules are all made of epithelial tissues. Epithelial tissues cells are tightly packed and form a continuous sheet. They have only a small amount of cementing material between them and almost no intercellular spaces. Obviously, anything entering or leaving the body must cross at least one layer of epithelium. As a result, the permeability of the cells of various epithelia play an important role in regulating the exchange of materials between the body and the external environment, and also between different parts of the body. Regardless of the type, all epithelium is usually separated from the underlying tissue by an extracellular fibrous basement membrane. Different epithelia figure show differing structure that correlate with their unique function. For example, in cells lining blood vessels or lung alveoli, where transportation of substances occurs through a selectively permeable surface, there is a simple flat kind of epithelium. This is called the simple squamous epithelium. Squama means scale. A. Squamous. B. Stratified squamous. C. Cuboidal. D. Columnar ciliated. Figure. Different types of epithelial tissues. Of skin, simple squamous epithelial cells are extremely thin and flat and form a delicate lining. The esophagus and the lining of the mouth are also covered with squamous epithelium. The skin, which protects the body, is also made of squamous epithelium. The skin epithelial cells are arranged in many layers to prevent wear and tear. Since they are arranged in a pattern of layers, the epithelium is called a stratified squamous epithelium, where absorption and secretion occur as in the inner lining of the intestine. Tall epithelium cells are present. This columnar, meaning pillar-like epithelium, facilitates movement across the epithelial barrier. In the respiratory tract, the columnar epithelial tissues also has cilia, which are hair-like projection on the outer surfaces of epithelial cells. These cilia can move, and their movement pushes the mucus forward to clear it. This type of epithelium is thus ciliated columnar epithelium. Cuboidal epithelium with cube-shaped cells form the lining of kidney tubules and ducts of salivary glands, where it provides mechanical support. Epithelial cells often acquire additional specializations as gland cells, which can secrete substances at the epithelial surface. Sometimes a portion of the epithelial tissue folds inward and a multicellular gland is formed. This is glandular epithelium. 6.3.2 Connective tissue. Blood is a type of connective tissue. Why would it be called connective tissue? A clue is provided in the introduction of this chapter. Now let us look at this type of tissue in some more detail. The cells of connective tissue are loosely spaced and embedded in an intercellular matrix. Figure. The matrix may be jelly-like, fluid, dense, or rigid. The nature of matrix differs in concordance with the function of the particular connective tissue. Activity 6.4. Do this. Take a drop of blood on a slide and observe different cells present in it under a microscope. Cytoplasm, nucleus, basophil, eosinophil, neutrophil, polynuclear leukocyte, lymphocyte, monocyte, platelets, different white blood corpuscles. A. Habersian canal contains blood vessels and nerve fibers. Canaliculus contains slender process of bone, cell or osteocyte. Red blood corpuscles. Chondrocyte, hyaline matrix, C. Reticular fiber, fibroblast. Macrophage, collagen fiber, mast cell, plasma cell. Blood droplet, nucleus, adipocyte. C. Figure. The types of connective tissues are types of blood cells: B. Compact bone, hyaline cartilage, D. Areolar tissues, E. Adipose tissues. Blood has a fluid liquid matrix called plasma. in which red blood corpuscles RBCs, white blood corpuscles WBCs, and platelets are suspended. The plasma contains proteins, salt and hormones, blood flows and transport gases, digestive food, hormones and waste materials to different parts of the body. Bone is another example of a the plasma contains proteins, salt and hormones, blood flows and transport gases, digestive food, hormones and waste material to different parts of the body. Bone is another example of a connective tissue. It forms the framework that supports the body. It also anchors the muscles and supports the main organs of the body. It is a strong and non-flexible tissue. What would be the advantage of these properties for bone functions? Bone cells are embedded into a hard matrix. It forms the framework that supports the body. It also anchors the muscle and supports the main organs of the body. It is a strong and non-flexible tissue. What would be the advantage of these properties for bone functions? Bone cells are embedded in a hard matrix that is composed of calcium and phosphorus compounds. Two bones can be connected to each other by another type of connective tissues called the ligament. This tissue is very elastic. It has considerable strength. Ligament contains very little matrix and connect bones with bones. Tendons connect muscles to bones and are another type of connective tissues. Tendons are fibrous tissues with great strength but limited flexibility. Another type of connective tissue, cartilage, that widely spaced cells. The solid matrix is composed of proteins and sugar. Cartilage smoothens bones surfaces at joints and is also present in the nose, ear, trachea, and larynx. We can fold the cartilage of the ear, but we cannot bend the bones in our arms. Think of how the two tissues are different. Areolar connective tissue is found between the skin and muscles, around blood vessels and nerves and in the bone marrow. It fills the space inside the organ, supports internal organs and helps in repair of tissues. Where are fats stored in our body? Fat storing adipose tissues is found below the skin and between internal organs. The cells of the tissues are filled with fat traveled. Fat globules. The storage of fats also lets it act as an insulator. 6.3.3 Muscular tissue. Muscular tissue consists of elongated cells, also called muscle fibers. This tissue is responsible for movement in our body. Muscles contain special proteins called contractile proteins, which contract and relax to cause movement. Nuclei, striations, spindle-shaped muscle cell A. Nucleus B. Striations, nuclei C. Figure. Types of muscle fibers: A. Striated muscle, B. Smooth muscle, C. Cardiac muscle. We can move some muscles by conscious will. Muscles present in our limbs move when we want them to and stop when we so decide. Such muscles are called voluntary muscles. Figure A. These muscles are also called skeletal muscles as they are mostly attached to bones and help in body movement. Under the microscope, These muscles show alternate light and dark bands or striations when strained appropriately. As a result, they are also called striated muscle. The cells of this tissue are long, cylindrical, and unbranched and multinucleate, having many nuclei. The movement of food in the alimentary canal or the contraction and relaxation of blood vessels are involuntary movements. We cannot really start them or stop them simply by wanting to do so. The smooth muscles, figure B, or involuntary muscles control such movements. They are also found in the iris of the eye, in ureters, and in the bronchi of the lungs. The cells are long with pointed ends, spindle-shaped, and uninucleate, having a single nucleus. They are also called unstriated muscles. Why would they be called that? The muscles of the heart show rhythmic contraction and relaxation throughout life. These involuntary muscles are called cardiac muscles. Figure C. Heart muscle cells are cylindrical, branched, and uninucleate. Activity 6.5. Do this. Compare the structures of different types of muscular tissues. Note down their shapes, numbers of nuclei, and position of nuclei within the cell in the table 6.1. Table features striated, smooth, cardiac shape, number of nuclei, position of nuclei. 6.3.4 Nervous tissue. All cells possesses the ability to respond to stimuli. However, cells of the nervous tissue are highly specialized for being stimulated and then transmitting the stimulus very rapidly from one place to another within the body. The brain, spinal cord, and nerves are all composed of the nervous tissues. The cells of this tissue are called nerve cells or neurons. A neuron consists of a cell body with a nucleus and cytoplasm, from which long thin hair-like parts arise. Figure. Usually each neuron has a single long part process called the axon and many short, branched parts. Figure. Neuron unit of nervous tissue. Nucleus, dendrite, axon, nerve ending, cell body. Processes called dendrites. An individual's nerve cell may be up to a meter long. Many nerve fibers bound together by connective tissue make up a nerve. The signal that passes along the nerve fiber is called a nerve impulse. Nerve impulses allow us to move our muscle when we want to. The functional combination of nerve and muscle tissue is fundamental to most animals. This combination enables animals to move rapidly in response to stimuli. Questions? Comment this. What you have learnt? Tissue is a group of cells similar in structure and functions. Plant tissue are of two main types, meristematic and permanent. Meristematic tissues is the dividing tissues present in the growing regions of the plant. Permanent tissues are derived from meristematic tissue once they lose the ability to divide. They are classified as simple and complex tissues. Parenchyma, collenchyma, and sclerenchyma are three types of simple tissues. Xylem and phloem are types of complex tissues. Animal tissues can be epithelial, connective, muscular, and nervous tissues. Depending on shape and functions, epithelial tissue is classified as squamous, cuboidal, columnar, ciliated, and granular. The different types of connective tissues in our body include areolar tissue, adipose tissue, bone, tendon, ligament, cartilage, and blood. Striated, unstriated, and cardiac are three types of muscle tissues. Nervous tissue is made of neurons that receive and conduct impulses. Exercises. Do this and comment this. Permanent tissue. Simple, complex, simple dash parenchyma dash complex xylem dash comment this.